Picture this. You're scrolling through social media on a quiet Monday morning when you suddenly see the news that your own grandmother has died. Not from a family phone call, not from someone close to you, but from strangers posting about it online. This is exactly what happened to Ryan Melcher, the only grandson of Hollywood legend Doris Day, and it reveals a heartbreaking family secret that was hidden from the world for over 14 years. What you're about to hear will shock you. Behind the perfect smile and sunny personality that made Doris Day America's sweetheart lay a family torn apart by tragedy, manipulation, and secrets that would make any soap opera writer jealous. Ryan Melcher, now 41 years old, has finally decided to break his silence about what really happened in his famous grandmother's final years, and the truth is more devastating than anyone could have imagined. Let me take you back to the beginning of this incredible story. Doris Day wasn't just any ordinary grandmother. She was one of the biggest movie stars in the world, known for her infectious laugh, her beautiful voice, and movies that made millions of people happy. From Pillow Talk with Rock Hudson to Calamity Jane, she was the kind of star who seemed to have it all. But behind all that glamour and success, there was a real person dealing with real family problems that would eventually tear her small family apart. Ryan Melcher was born in 1981, the son of Doris Day's only child, Terry Melcher. Now, Terry wasn't just any regular guy either. He was a successful music producer who worked with some of the biggest names in the business, including the Beach Boys and the Byrds. Terry had inherited his mother's talent, just in a different way. He was the bridge between Doris Day's golden Hollywood era and the rock and roll revolution of the 1960s and 70s. When Ryan was little, everything seemed perfect. There are beautiful photos of him as a young boy with his famous grandmother, both of them smiling and looking like they had the kind of close relationship every grandparent and grandchild dreams of having. Doris Day, who had always been known for her love of animals and her big heart, seemed to pour all of that love into her grandson. They would spend time together, and she would tell him stories about her days in Hollywood, about the famous people she knew, and about the adventures she had lived through. But then something terrible happened that changed everything forever. In November 2004, when Ryan was just 23 years old, his father Terry Melcher died from melanoma, a deadly form of skin cancer. Terry was only 62 years old, way too young to die, and his death hit the family like a devastating earthquake. Losing a child is something no parent should ever have to go through. And for Doris Day, who was 82 at the time, losing Terry was absolutely crushing. You might think that this tragedy would have brought grandmother and grandson closer together. After all, they were both grieving the same person, both feeling the same terrible loss. Ryan had just lost his father, and Doris Day had lost her only son. It would make sense that they would lean on each other for support during this incredibly difficult time. But that's not what happened at all. Instead, something strange and heartbreaking began to occur. After Terry's death, the close relationship between Doris Day and Ryan started to fall apart. But this wasn't because of anything Ryan did wrong. In fact, according to what Ryan has revealed, it wasn't really Doris Day's choice either. The person who came between them was someone most people had never heard of, a man who became one of the most important and controversial figures in Doris Day's final years. His name was Bob Bashara, and he was Doris Day's business manager. Now, business managers are supposed to help celebrities handle their money and their careers, but Bashara seemed to have much more control over Doris Day's life than just her finances. According to Ryan, Bashara didn't just manage Doris Day's business affairs. He managed who could and couldn't see her, who could talk to her, and who was allowed to be part of her life. Ryan has revealed that Bashara essentially became a gatekeeper, standing between him and his grandmother like some kind of protective shield. But the question everyone wants to know is, why? What possible reason could there have been for keeping a grandmother away from her only grandson, especially after they had both suffered such a terrible loss? The truth, as Ryan tells it, is both simple and incredibly sad. After Terry died, there were disagreements about his estate and his inheritance. When someone dies, especially someone who has money and property, family members don't always agree about who should get what. These kinds of disputes can tear families apart, and unfortunately, that's exactly what happened to the Melcher family. But here's where the story gets even more complicated and heartbreaking. Ryan claims that Bashara told Doris Day things about him that simply weren't true. According to Ryan, Bashara painted him as someone who was only interested in his grandmother's money, someone who couldn't be trusted, someone who might try to take advantage of her in her old age. These accusations were devastating to Ryan, who says he never cared about his grandmother's money. He just wanted to have a relationship with the only close family member he had left. The really tragic part is that Doris Day, who was getting older and perhaps becoming more dependent on the people around her for information about the outside world, apparently believed what Bashara was telling her. She started to see Ryan as a threat instead of as her beloved grandson, who was grieving the loss of his father just like she was grieving the loss of her son. For 14 years, from 2004 until Doris Day's death in 2019, Ryan was essentially cut off from his grandmother. 14 years is a long time. It's long enough for relationships to die, for people to become strangers, for love to turn into hurt and confusion. During those 14 years, Ryan tried multiple times to reconnect with his grandmother. He reached out through phone calls, letters, and messages, but every attempt was blocked. Imagine how that must have felt for Ryan. Every birthday that passed without a call from his grandmother. Every holiday spent wondering if she was thinking about him. Every time he saw her name in the news or saw her picture somewhere, he must have been reminded of the relationship they used to have and the relationship they could have had if things had been different. The saddest part of all is that Doris Day herself might not have even known that Ryan was trying to contact her. If Bashara was really controlling who could reach her and what information she received, it's possible that she never knew about Ryan's attempts to reconnect. She might have spent those 14 years thinking that Ryan didn't care about her anymore, that he had moved on with his life and forgotten about his old grandmother. Meanwhile, Ryan was building his own life. He got married, started a career in real estate, and tried to move forward despite the gaping hole in his life where his relationship with his grandmother used to be. But no matter how successful he became or how happy his life was in other ways, there was always this sadness, this sense of something important missing. Then came May 13th, 2019, the day that changed everything and nothing all at the same time. Ryan was going about his normal day when he started seeing posts on social media and news reports announcing that Doris Day had died peacefully at her home in California. She was 97 years old and had lived a long, full life. But for Ryan, finding out about his grandmother's death from strangers on the internet was like getting punched in the stomach. Just think about that for a moment. Your grandmother dies, and instead of getting a phone call from family or being with her in her final moments, you find out the same way millions of complete strangers do. There's something so cold and heartless about that, something that shows just how completely the family had been broken apart. After Doris Day's death, Ryan decided he couldn't stay silent anymore. The pain and frustration he had been carrying for 14 years finally became too much to bear. He wrote a long, emotional post on Facebook where he told the world what had really been happening behind the scenes. In that post, he revealed how Bashara had allegedly kept him away from his grandmother and how he had learned about her death through the media instead of through family. The Facebook post was heartbreaking to read. Ryan wrote about his memories of his grandmother from when he was young, about how much he had loved her and how much he had missed her during all those years of separation. He wrote about the confusion and hurt he felt, about the questions that would now never be answered, and about the relationship that could have been but never was. But Ryan didn't just write that post to complain or to feel sorry for himself. He wrote it because he wanted people to know the truth about what had happened, and because he wanted to honor the memory of the grandmother he had loved so much as a child. He wanted people to understand that behind all the Hollywood glamour and success, Doris Day was a real person who had real family relationships, and that those relationships had been damaged by forces beyond her control. The response to Ryan's Facebook post was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of people commented with messages of support and sympathy. Many people shared their own stories of family disputes and estrangements. Others expressed anger at the way Ryan had been treated and sadness that Doris Day had spent her final years separated from her only grandson. But not everyone believed Ryan's story. Bob Bashara, the business manager at the center of the controversy, mostly stayed quiet about the accusations. Through Doris Day's publicist, There were some suggestions that the situation was more complicated than Ryan was making it seem, but no detailed explanation was ever given about why grandmother and grandson had been kept apart for so many years. The truth is, we may never know exactly what happened behind closed doors in those final 14 years of Doris Day's life. We don't know what conversations took place, what decisions were made, or what information Doris Day was or wasn't given about her grandson's attempts to contact her. What we do know is that a family was broken apart, and that breakdown had consequences that lasted until the very end. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of this whole story is thinking about what Doris Day herself might have wanted. Throughout her career, she was known as someone who valued family and relationships. Her movies often celebrated the importance of love and connection between people. She was famous for her work with animal charities because she believed in caring for creatures who couldn't care for themselves. Would someone with those values really have wanted to be separated from her only grandson for 14 years? It's possible that in her final years, as she got older and perhaps more fragile, Doris Day relied more and more on the people around her to make decisions and to filter information. If those people had their own reasons for wanting to keep Ryan away, she might not have had the full picture of what was really happening. She might have gone to her grave thinking that her grandson didn't love her anymore, never knowing that he had been trying to reach her all along. Ryan Melcher is now 41 years old, living in California and working as a successful real estate agent. He's married and has built a good life for himself, but the loss of those 14 years with his grandmother is something he'll carry with him forever. In interviews since his grandmother's death, he's been clear that he's not angry with Doris Day herself. He understands that she was elderly and possibly being influenced by people she trusted. His anger is directed at the people who he believes deliberately kept them apart. The story of Ryan Melcher and Doris Day is a reminder that fame and fortune don't protect people from family problems. Even the biggest movie stars in the world can find themselves caught in situations where family members are turned against each other, where love is replaced by suspicion, and where years can pass without the relationships that should matter most. It's also a story about the importance of questioning the people we trust with our lives. When someone gets older or becomes more dependent on others, it's crucial that the people around them have their best interests at heart, not their own agendas. Family relationships are precious and fragile, and once they're broken, they can be incredibly difficult to repair. For Ryan, the revelation he shared with the world isn't just about clearing his own name or setting the record straight. It's about honoring the memory of his father Terry, who died too young, and his grandmother Doris, who lived a long life but may have spent her final years without knowing how much her grandson still loved her. It's about making sure that the truth is told, even when that truth is painful and complicated. The secret that Doris Day kept hidden for decades wasn't something glamorous or scandalous in the traditional sense. It wasn't about affairs or secret marriages or hidden fortunes. The secret was much sadder than that. The secret was that one of America's most beloved entertainers, someone who brought joy to millions of people, spent her final years separated from her own flesh and blood because of misunderstandings, manipulation, and the kind of family drama that destroys relationships. As we look back on Doris Day's incredible life and career, we can celebrate all the happiness she brought to the world through her movies and her music. We can remember her as a sunny, optimistic performer who always seemed to find the bright side of any situation. But we should also remember that behind that public persona was a real woman who experienced real loss and real heartbreak, just like the rest of us. Ryan Melcher's revelation reminds us that family is the most important thing we have, and that we should never let anything or anyone come between us and the people we love. Life is short, and the time we have with our family members is precious. Once someone is gone, we can't get back the years we've lost or the conversations we never had. If you've been touched by this story, if it's made you think about your own family relationships or reminded you the importance of staying connected to the people who matter most, then please hit that like button below. Share this video with your friends and family, because you never know who might need to hear this message about the importance of family and the danger of letting other people control our most important relationships. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell, because we're committed to bringing you the real stories behind the headlines, the truth about the lives of the people we think we know, and the lessons we can all learn from the experiences of others. Together, We can make sure that stories like Ryan and Doris's help us all become better at protecting and nurturing the relationships that matter most in our own lives.